A very warm welcome to you all. So I would like to request Mr. Vidur to proceed the session further.
Thank you, Surabhi. Very warm good afternoon, everyone. My name is Vidur. I'm part of EY. And today, we have a great set of four panelists who intend to debate and discuss around public sector digitization. I think that theme is the bigger one, and the specific focus around how do we embed security and privacy. And then we're talking about across all the three levels. That's strategic, operational, and more importantly, even at tactical level. I think as a country, we've made significant progress in when we talk about digitization as a broad theme, and specifically when I talk about public sector and government services, be it in terms of citizen delivery of services, be it in terms of access to internet for rural places, or be it in terms of actually enhancing digital inclusion for various strata of communities, kind of thing. We've done, as a country, I feel we've done fairly decent progress in the last few years. We can clearly see, of course, from a visible perspective, we as citizens, be it in terms of accessing our government documentation, or be it in terms of enrollment, or utilizing certain beneficiary services, or for example, things like taxation and all, it has been a fairly great digital enabled journey for us. And at the same time, I personally feel that it has also helped in improving the efficiency and effectiveness of government and public sector entities internally as well, in terms of streamlining the processes as well. Just that, while the focus has been on the digitization, just to ensure the success and the robustness of it, and very clearly the sustenance, fortunately, unfortunately, the security and privacy plays fairly an important role. It plays an important role from an entire ecosystem perspective itself. And when I say ecosystem, I'm just saying, be it in terms of wider regulation, wider policies being there, in terms of how do we get enhanced skills, how do we get broader talent which is there, and of course in terms of if there is a clear mechanism of if there is an attack, do we have things like in terms of how do we respond to that plan per se. So in terms of the entire element, and of course more importantly collaboration between the entities as well, because cyber is one domain or security is one domain, it can't be solved just individually by an entity or by somebody. So that's just from a background perspective. The way we thought of taking the next 45 minutes was, let me request for some initial thoughts and views from our panelists. I do have a few set of questions which I thought of that maybe I can ask on behalf of everyone, and then we'll definitely be keen to use last few minutes to take some questions from the audience. Yeah. So maybe just in the sequence of we sitting, maybe I'll take your suggestion. Just the initial thoughts about this theme.
Yeah, the theme is good because digitization is the new mantra. Whatever the purpose have been used, but people, it has been said as digital transformation. But what are we transforming? That's the simple thing is, are we changing any processes? Are we changing any people? What is it that is bad in the process which I am changing? Because technology is only, a new technology will be replaced by a new technology. The new technology will be replaced by further down the stream. But if I am not transforming something, if I am any processes, there is not much efficiency to be realized at. That is my personal perception based on my experience in OT areas and all. And when we say digitization, most of the transformation which has happened in IT, I think the last process transformation is only the, what do you call, the paperless office. After that, there is not much digitization as a process. It is much only protecting. It is only the products, the tools, everything is focused on protecting the assets in IT. And there is a limitation to that. And there is nothing like 100% guarantee on that. Earlier it was analytics. So in analytics, when we say digitization analytics, It is taking the business data. The business data is in the field down below. How to improve the process by analyzing the data. How can I do predictive analytics? So that's where the digitization has a foremost role that is still valid. And this is a lot of public sectors are doing, a lot of efforts are putting that. But in this era of getting analytics means connection of OT to IT. So if OT says availability is my concern, I will live with XP, the entire plant is gone. Because if somebody says I have perfect air gap, he is living in a foolish paradise. Because of the analytics nature, analytics, the business money is in analytics, it is, and data is in the field itself, the sensors are there. So when any digitization means, digitization per se means connection of OT to IT. It is integration. So in addition to protection of the IT, how do I protect OT? Because IT is now connected to OT. That is the new threat perception, and that is where we are all working. So this is an apt topic which I think, because you said how to build up cybersecurity and digitization efforts, which is really required at the conceptualization stage itself.
If I may request Dr. Chara.
Thank you, Vidur. And at the outset, I would definitely like to thank DSCI to finally include public sector in their discussions. You know, it's such a delight, because usually whenever I would come to such events, I used to be the lone ranger in terms of sarkar se aayi hai aur isko kya samajh aayega wala approach. But anyway, and jokes apart, Vidur, I would just, when you ask this question, I go back in memory lane. And like Paparaju said, public sector is now definitely moving from being descriptive to finally being predictive. Earlier, as a systems analyst, when I started my journey 32 years ago, we would just look at, you know, various data and we would allocate labels to explain. And now the management, the strategic, like you said, the strategic leaders in terms of chief minister of states, I'm handling something for UP now, and I was in midst of final submission, and everybody saying, Yogi saab kya kahenge, wo data ko dashboard pe dekhna hai. So we want to be predictive in terms of creating, like he said, decision support systems where we can guide the strategic and operational you know, management leaders to take decisions where public money is optimally utilized. So is sari story ke andar, who's the king? Data is the king. You said data is the oil, and I was just thinking, data is not the oil. Data is gold, you know, raw chunk of gold biscuit, which you can tweak any way to make a jewelry for public decision making, for supporting, and hence it needs to be protected. And when it needs to be protected in a manner that it is not tortured by the rogue actors, because ye mere citizen ka data hai. And it is very critical, it's very sensitive, and it's like the scope is so high. So the next thing I have realized over a period of time from strategic perspective is that the top leaders at decision making, they are very keen on going ahead with everything that is IT in public sector digitization. Okay, ye systems banane hai, ye networking karna, acha on-prem nahi jana, cloud jana hai, which is very good. But when it comes to providing for risk assessment, cyber security, privacy, somehow their priorities just start from, you know, the bottom ladder, which is something which is a big challenge, and that is where we need a stakeholder network, a collaborative effort of everybody, including, let's say, not just the leaders, not just the CXOs, the CISOs and CTOs and everybody else, but we also need to ensure that citizens themselves become more demanding through media channels, which is, remember the Aadhaar controversy we had when Dr. AISS Sharma had to reassure citizens that if you give your Aadhaar, your data is still safe. So what I'm saying is we need to focus on proactive citizenry now. From data governance, we should move to the concept of strategic governance, where my top is involved. That's what I was trying to say. The top is kind of low energy when it comes to these aspects, but high energy when it comes to designing IT. And from them to go from low level to high level, citizen can do their part along with media. Thank you.
Yeah. So I have little different answer to your question. When you are talking about digitization in public sector, let me be very, I'll narrow down my, say, thoughts in case of oil marketing companies, OMCs we generally call about. And in this type of companies, digitization started way back. Okay, in fact, there was a time, I think, before 2000 or so, we started with ERP adoption and all. So where that manual data got converted into digital data. So that was our first stage. Then came, we had this data for years along. We started realizing we have lots of data. How can we leverage that, and how can we have it, say, in a automated format, so that we can optimize our resources? That may be skilled manpower, that may be, say, how I can right size my inventory. So all these things started coming up with, say, digitalization of journey. And in recent years, it's recent means last, I think, couple of years only, the digital transformation started happening. That means now there are strategic operations how to monetize this data. That started happening. So I feel this journey from digitization to digitalization to digital transformation, when it is growing from one step to the other, even cyber security also started, say, taking good, it started working in detail like. So initially, probably, yes, what you're saying is absolutely right. People may not be aware of this particular domain. But I'll say post 2000, 2003, 2004, somewhere around that time, we started making our policies, information security policies. That means cybersecurity journey also started. And because this workload started moving from, say, on-premise to cloud and all, even how to secure your cloud workload, that one has to look into. Again, if we talk about, say, privacy, these companies are holding lot of, say, consumer data. And wherever you are offering any service to public, you are holding their personal data. And that awareness, as Madam said, Aadhaar brought that awareness into this ecosystem. And hence, even privacy-related matter is taken very seriously in these organizations. So that's my, say, take on this.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
I would add on to the views expressed by the panel. I think as they were speaking, digitalization to transformation, one word which is coming in my head is pervasiveness. Now, all walks of business streams, they are not only digitalized, they are all inclusive, there are multitude of devices, multiple channels, and multiple dimensions which are impacting the whole thing. Which brings us from the very start, from where you started the topic, is impacts the governance. The governance is evolving into a new plane of complexity. And that brings in to the place from where the governance seeds are laid down in the management training institutes. What do they train you for? For example, when we were in the young days, I heard of quantitative techniques or qualitative techniques and those kind of HR initiatives or IT specialization, finance specialization. I think one mandatory semester load of digitalization related course material is now ready for the MBA people stepping into the governance framework. And sadly, when those attributes are still in the works for the current generation, we are obviously seeing those gaps. I think the COVID times have exposed us. We are actually walking into an autopilot mode with regard to technology. So when it comes to such challenges, there is a requirement and there's a solution, and the solution we walk in, and there's a sense of urgency, and those kind of IT projects just roll in. And as we always have been saying, that security comes as an afterthought. So that's where the problem is, that today, when what Madam has just been referring, that we have such initiatives by the governments, and everybody is kind of wanting to look everything on the dashboard. That takes a priority, and underlying security hitches or the ponderables, if they are brought in, they are looked as roadblocks. So that's where the governance has to take a call. It requires a bit of maturity, and because most of the public sector is involved in some kind of a critical infrastructure role, and critical infrastructure impacts large public impact issues. So those things have a very different level of governance, and it is not the public sector people alone who manage such issues. Also the government, the ministries, the bureaucracy, all are involved into that process. So the governance is multidimensional as far as the public sector is concerned, and obviously a pervasive digitalization includes many more new dimensions which is required to be taken cognizance by the boards. As far as the power sector is concerned, for example, the Central State Authority has brought in the new guidelines, and which say the cybersecurity now takes to be taken to the board level. The utilities need to brief the board. Now that's a major cultural shift. That's a new challenge.
Absolutely, and thanks for that perspective. Let me start maybe my thoughts of certain questions, and Mr. Paparaju, with you, taking the cue from what Mr. Anand also said, and which in my mind bases experience, that it's not easy to solve cyber security related challenges or threats alone. The collaborative effort is definitely needed, and we've seen that a lot of central agencies like NCI, PC, which has been trying to drive that agenda of sectoral certs and collaboration of sharing threat intelligence, threat information. Just wanted to hear your views, specifically, with oil and gas domain that you come. How's that sectoral cert in your mind is panning out, and what can be more efforts around that for collaborating, by public sector entities, by government, or even industries, corporates, to tackle this?
We normally get involved with the day-to-day life. Every day we have a communication with threat intel and other things. Sectoral threat intel, if we are getting different states and all, it is only a means of organizational improvement. Functionally, it is centralized, because nowadays we are splitting our organizations, multi-layered, into single, two-layered organization, saying you go into the web server and download it, whatever information is. So if it is only intel which is to be get, it's whatever is certain, says the warnings, threat intel, everything is available. Like recently, certain has mentioned a warning which showed an exposure of CVE of 2005, which is there in all the router switches. None of the manufacturers have patched it. It is as per Microsoft threat intel, it has come, and one of the company which pointed out as a stall here, recorded future, and certain followed it up, gave a warning. Only thing is, how many of us have patched it? So sectoral certain is not going to help us. Sectoral certain will help only the organizational transfer of the information, awareness, spreading awareness. So it's only a very part and parcel of the certain activity, because now certain activities are huge. Within 6 hours, they are asking us threat intel report. So, but thing is, if I inform him, then what is his action plan? Their action plan. So they have a tremendous background role. They are monitoring the country. They are into a big project called honeypots projects, where most of the critical organizations have we have a server, honeypot server installed inside our premises, most of the organizations, at multiple gateways. We also have the collectors installed in many of our public sectors. And they are going to establish a SOC of all SOCs. Most of the public sectors have SOCs, and they are certainly in the process of establishing a SOC connecting all these SOCs, so that they can focus industry-wise, give the threat intel industry-wise, local-wise and all. These are mostly centralized activities, but apart from that, awareness, spreading the, because awareness part is a critical activity, because as per the last Gartner review report, 82% of the threats have happened because of insider industry. These insiders, employees, disgruntled employees, or weakness employees, involuntarily, or whatever you call it. Somebody clicks it, that's the story ends. Because whatever defense we are building is the perimeter defense. So we are all the focusing the products and are only for the 18% of the incidents. 82% of the incidents is awareness. So there certain sectoral may have a huge role in spreading the awareness, in protecting oneself from cyber crime. Because certain has a role across the country.
Thanks for bringing that out, and absolutely right that we tend to get a little, if I may say, swayed by all the products and all. I'm not saying that they are not important. They're equally important, but at the same stage, just the internal awareness and how do we utilize that is also equally of importance. So maybe let me move to Dr. Charu. Be it across from a central perspective, be it from a state perspective, or lot of large public sector entities, we've seen that they have been fairly stable and good in terms of drawing out a strategic plan in terms of what we should do for security, what we should do for privacy, how do we drive it. But unfortunately, and this is my experience, I've been on the other side as a consultant playing a role. Maybe, how does that plan, strategic plan, get converted into operational or tactical? We do tend to maybe drop the ball, if I may use the word, or perhaps, yes, it does happen, but how do we sustain it? That's where the challenges creep in. So, from your perspective, just wanted to know, what do you believe are basic steps that we ensure that whatever great strategic thoughts we have, we also are able to sustain it at a tactical level as well?
On a very light note, if public sector is not able to protect itself, you are not on the other side. You have trained them as my CISO trainer. So we train Chief Information Security Officers at my organization, Indian Institute of Public Administration, and he is one of my faculty there. So anyway, so now coming to the real question that how do we look at it? And like Papa Raju said, it's insider threat which is important. It's not just like they said north to south, but it's also east to west movement, which is like in information security that we need to look, or in cyber security we need to look at. So there is a model which I follow and I train my Chief Information Security Officers on, that is IT POSMO model by Richard Heeks. He gave it back in 2013. And it gives you all the points, and I love that model, and it's very good for design reality gap. That means what you envisage and what has actually translated at tactical and operational level is to be measured not across a broader framework, but a very micro level framework, which is referred as IT POSMO. So IT is information flow, and T is technologies in terms of what were advised and have they been implemented, like XDR, etc., SIM, SOC, so all technologies, including non-digital also. Then like ma'am said, P is processes. You focus on all the processes, the flows and everything. Then you come to the most important part, which is O, which we tend to ignore, which is objectives and values. Whether my management had a particular objective, whether it has been satisfied, strategic objectives and value of the organization, the charter of the organization, etc. Has it been responded by the new implementation? And then we move on to talk about management systems and structures, because till there is no leader at a particular level, the whole process or technology or implementation structure will collapse. So that is why it's very important to check the the man-women oblique women component, the HR component. And apart from that, what were the kind of, time or overruns we've been able to meet? What are the kind of cost overruns we've been able to avoid? So the other O, the last O is about that. The most important one I deliberately kept for end is the S, the staff, the skill. So when you have everything in place through IT POSMO model, where you have systems in place, where you have leaders in place, where you have processes in place, you tend to forget what to train them on, how to keep them recursively updated. And this is where we should know that the gap between digital hygiene or cyber hygiene and cyber security starts blending. Like Papa Raju said, like the weakest link is probably the person behind the machine. And you have safeguarded, there are no air gaps or they've been taken care, but you completely forgot the S component, the staff component, where there was a deliberate or inadvertent mishap because of simple, reasons. So if all of us as CISOs or leaders keep in mind IT POSMO model, trust me, design reality gap will be bridged. Thank you.
Thank you for, at least I wasn't aware of this model. Interesting one, will read it up. Moving on, Sheetal ma'am, and I really liked when you specifically highlighted that perhaps oil and gas industry from a public sector domain started their ERP or digitization journey way back. So maybe correlated to that, while that's amazing to hear and yes to realize, but at the same time, an industry like the one you represent is also a CII, which is a critical information infrastructure. And when we talk of embedding security and privacy in any facet of public sector, there are, say, 1, 2, 3 things to be done. But just wanted to hear your thoughts that any industry, any sector which is specifically a CII called out, what are the other additional hats or additional thought process they should have when they're driving this security and privacy? And I know one of the aspect around OT, Mr. Paparaju already touched, so happy to hear those thoughts.
Right. So when we talk about security, it's not a one solution fits all kind of an option available with us. We have to have, understand the use case behind when we go for this kind of implementation. And that's the reason we should start when the conceptualization is happening or when the design is happening. At that time, even the security need to be discussed and deliberated so that proper security controls can be implemented along with the original solution. And as we said, in case of, so this is perhaps the case with IT. But now with the new digital transformation projects also, this thing is being, discussed. And that is the reason, even because cyber is becoming, it's a part and parcel of each and every project, or from where the threat will come and what vulnerability will make you suffer, that's not known to anyone. And from that reason, because of that unknown fear, companies are going for security related, discussions also. And that's a really good change. If you see just 2-3 years before, probably in the boardrooms, security was not even discussed, because they used to say, you are the subject matter expert, please deal with it. And we do have some other important aspects to discuss. But no, now the kind of attacks are happening worldwide. Because of that, even these things are getting discussed. The projects related in this domain are also discussed. And why I'm saying is because this small set of risk assessment is required when we carry out any new thing. At the same time, basic things cannot be, we cannot ignore the basic part of it also. In case of OT as well, you talked about OT. We need to have that basic hygiene per se, the antivirus has to be there, the patching has to be there, or the asset inventory should be known, or in case of OT, probably this is not happening at the regular interval. the way IT is doing it. But whenever it is happening, like say there may be these OEMs are checking these patches in their environment, certifying them, and then only releasing them for the environment, for that particular environment. And they may be having some practices like remotely you can download these patches, probably yes, to a common server. From there it should go into the OT environment, and that process need to be monitored. It cannot be just like that, the patch is coming down and going into OT. If there is, then there is a probability of OT system getting compromised. Or few of these vendors are providing options of their engineers come down with those patches. So even when these engineers are coming, you should have process in place to check, to verify, cross-check their credentials, then only allow them to carry out something. So in IT, we just have set up for patching, we just have central patching server wherein it's get downloaded and it gets pushed also. In OT, we cannot take that kind of, lenient approach. We need to be little more of these processes need to be stringent. And that will help this OT environment, because right now this environment is not as mature as IT, everyone is aware of. And OEMs are not allowing, customers like us to have more knowledge about that also. So till the time we have that kind of, we get that kind of maturity in this, yes, definitely the processes need to be more stringent.
Absolutely. I think OT is one domain which everybody is learning together, kind of thing. Thank you. Anand sir, moving on to you, and you know, with the reality is with not so friendly neighbors that we have within our geographical country, you know, power sector unfortunately has been like a targeted segment with various attacks. Just wanted to hear your views that, and at a very slightly broader, not saying specifically from the entity that you represent, but as India from a power domain, power sector, how well prepared we are, or what are those steps that we believe, be it specific to maybe generation, be it specific to transmission or distribution, that we really need to strengthen ourselves or keep our mind. And I specifically said in the context because we know we've been getting attacked from neighboring countries as well.
Thank you. I think from a readiness perspective, I would make a few observations. That power sector, not only in India, but even internationally, has been a very conservative. Like most of the OT segments, we are most conservative in terms of technology adoption, because first of all, the costing of the basic infrastructure is also high. And as a fundamental component of the economy, we have to keep the costs low. So that's a principle which is across the board. It's not only for power sector. Having said that, it sets a lot of principles. From a design perspective, we have a high reliability design. So that is an element which we borrow from the conservative principles of sustainability. The whole business process has to be highly reliable. And therefore, we have engineering practices which are designed fundamentally to increase the reliability part of it. Yes, the automation part of it has come in maybe last 10-15 years more and more, and more modern standards and standards-based products also have come in. But there are definitely pockets where the legacy continues, because the infrastructure is having a longer economic life, if I can say. Now, that's also the inner core. The outer core around this is the question which you are asking with regard to the readiness of the cybersecurity incidents and the attacks which are happening. That is a maturity which is growing, it's a journey. Ever since maybe last 2-3 years, I am closely monitoring that most utilities, they have been cornered by the ministry, by the sectoral surge, the NCIPC, to address the basic fundamental aspects with regard to employee preparedness. So there have been several sessions of training, including CISOs and board members have been also been especially going through the mock drills, designed for that level. So ministry has taken a lot of steps where each utility's CISO and the board members have been brought in, and they have undergone those kind of training programs. It has further driven in the process within the organizations past the CA guidelines. So CA guidelines has enforced that effort at each of the utility level. And it's a journey which will continue for some time. The readiness is very subjective in that sense. And it also depends on the resources which utility organizations have. So maybe private utilities and the public sector utilities are better in position, but the government utilities, typically the distribution level, they may be having other challenges. So that's one part of it, but I'm sure with the initiatives which are being taken from a CIA perspective, there are many things which are in the pipeline, and the maturity is suddenly improved in some sense, but yes, a lot of work still needs to be done.
Absolutely, I agree. I think the readiness is a journey, especially in the cyber domain. You know, every day you wake up and you have to be kind of geared on. Let me move slightly from a security-centric conversation to privacy conversation. You know, fortunately, and I'm personally very excited, we are on the verge of our data privacy, data protection regulation coming in. But and an open question to all four of you: public sector and government, all of us know as citizens, you know, have a huge amount of data, and of course for the right reasons they have it. But just wanted to hear your thoughts, you know, of course, as the regulation comes in, but also how do we now as public sector entities, how do we start driving privacy as a thought process? Privacy, of course, there are a lot of technologies to support privacy, but privacy, embedding privacy, how do we start with that journey?
I think the first question from an organizational responsibility perspective, who will own this agenda of privacy within an organization? Is it going to be the IT department, or is it going to be CISO's responsibility, or is it going to be HR responsibility?
Or
That's
even legal. Yeah, or even legal.
Yeah, legal. So the way these organizations are currently structured, probably it requires a re-engineering from a privacy perspective. Definitely, there has been a lot of sensitization of senior managements on regard to issue of privacy. But in terms of it's going down to the code level and or the organization processes levels, the conduct and discipline rules, the contractual obligations, many of those things still need to be codified, and probably they will fall in line as soon as the law is in place. But yes, as of now, the senior managements are sensitized on this aspect. And primarily at the moment, it so seems that the CISOs are cornered with this additional responsibility of privacy, which is a different subject actually.
Happy to hear any other thoughts.
I think privacy would be a big challenge culturally, because you all remember traveling in a train for 24 hours. When we get down, we know each other's families 3 generations. And we see our Facebook, we see our LinkedIn, we share everything. Culturally, we share it. And in organization also, we know all our colleagues' payslips. So privacy is a Western concept where the payslip is also not shared. You don't know how much your colleague earns. Whereas here it is, if I am earning 1 rupee less, you make a complaint and there's a big ask. Everybody in the company joins it. So this is culturally, this is going to be a big challenge, privacy. And the DPDP Act also says up to penalty of 500 crore. So you end up, who is going to the penalty? Suppose somebody is data information there. If I pay 500 crore to the government, how am I improving my system? So this needs to be debated, and ultimately the challenge is also that on one end, on social media, we are freely sharing or willing to give our privacy data, my tracking data, my personal data, everything I'm willing to have. Everybody has an Android phone. Somebody has an iPhone, but without Gmail or Android phone is not going to boot it up. So whoever has Android has already sold in the market. So why blame us for privacy? So there are challenges, but thing is what data is required. Now you come to any public sector or a private company, as a visitor, they will ask your Aadhaar card. Why do you need to give an Aadhaar card there? We need to look at the processes, and as per government, only the last 4 digit needs to be given. But you will ask every other card. So otherwise, you will keep the Aadhaar card as a proof. Even some areas where temples are inside the military area, they keep the Aadhaar card as a proof of ID. So when you go back from the military area, they give back the Aadhaar card. So thing is, what is the requirement? So privacy also, this is culturally, this is a big challenge. We have made steps, but mostly I think we are following the Western concept, where typically European concept, where everybody starts preaching, this is how the world should function, this is from my eyes. But culturally we are different. Typically privacy is a part of culture, personal I feel. So this is going to be, if we want to blindly follow the Western concept, a huge challenge. We need to modify it to our circumstances. Suppose I'm occupying the health data of my employees. If it leaks out, what is the importance? How do I take measures? As you said, how do I embed security in the process? But if the same data, we have seen cases where the admin passwords are stored in Gmail of the individual user. So there the official data is on the Gmail, and now there are cases where Gmail can be hacked without even a password. So I have seen the case study of it. So these are challenging times. So it is not a question of person to blame or who, but thing is we need to have a look at what data to be given, why should it be given, there should be a reason for it.
Yeah. Okay, so I'll give you the last word. Okay, so I personally feel सबसे पहले तो DPDP has given blanket exemptions to government. Okay, this might make us complacent, which is in public sector. Second is, let's emulate the same DPDP model within our organizations. Let us have a privacy management board within an organization, not an individual, like sir said. And I also feel that this is where my privacy management strategies, particularly in supply chain related activities like health and other things, are very critical. And last but not the least, two things we have ignored in this privacy journey, abhi tak, and we should at least imbibe in our own culture now, is number one, the role of auditor. The role of internal auditor is somebody, I keep harping on, his or her role is not just economic, operational or legal compliances, but it is also to transfer the whole organization as a digital unit. So from being a reticent player, an auditor can actually help you to design way forward strategies in terms of your how to stay proactive for managing your security and privacy concerns. And second thing is, we need to refocus on our risk management strategies also. The level of risk exposure, if I understand, for loss of my highly sensitive data on a supply chain or on my cloud, and then taking risk mitigation strategies accordingly is very, very important. Abhi kya ho raha hai ki, as I said, the top management says either they don't want to reveal the risk associated with privacy because it might annoy some stakeholders, and second is it is too costly, and third is I don't know what is the repercussion of all this. So if I focus on A, auditors in the journey of privacy, and B, I have elaborate risk management strategies rebuilt from percentages to probabilities like we used to calculate, to mitigation strategies, to monitoring and tracking our risk, we would be more private and secure. Thank you.
So in this case, I agree with sir, what sir has said. When it comes to privacy, the company thinks that CISO is the only responsible entity, or CISO office is the only responsible entity for cybersecurity and for privacy as well. Probably that is not the case here, because privacy is a totally different ballgame. One has to understand the laws, laws of the land, laws of the other lands also, and then accordingly you need to build your solutions and even identify the data and do whatever treatment plan you need to figure it out. And that is a good subject, matlab it requires some depth, and probably CISO may not fulfill all these requirements. To begin with, yes, CISO can help understand this, but again, a different setup would help. From the government point of view, yes, because this Aadhaar Act has come in place, that has also played a major role, because at least we started talking about some privacy. And then whatever journey we have gone through, the new version of Data Privacy Act, which has been put up, the journey has also brought some kind of awareness amongst organization that is required. Otherwise, again, it would have been difficult to adopt this by dropping a hat or so. So, in a way, say organizations are gearing up to this new challenge. At the same time, some regulatory body is also equally important, because you may be having lot of questions, and though the contours have been defined probably in this bill, but how to decipher that? For that reason, you need some governing body to whom you can go back, check your issues, and come back with solutions. That is the requirement.
Thank you, panelist, and of course, privacy is going to be a very interesting journey, and I know, looking forward to how we progress as a country and as, of course, public sector government entities. I know the time is up, so while we had said for the audience question, can I just request for like a very short question, and I promise that from our side, we'll try to keep the answer within 30 seconds. Just one question. Sorry about that, but yeah, we'll just take one.
So, good evening, sir. My name is Devendra. Am I audible?
Yes.
Yeah. So, first of all, thanks a lot for giving us very good insight in terms of oil sector and power sector. Sir, my question is regarding since we are into more in terms of IT, so we know very well what kind of cyber security and cyber attacks for IT organization. But when it comes to the oil and power sector, so what kind of different kind of attacks for your organization? Because I believe in power and oil sector, we more focus towards the physical security kind of things as well, and business continuity as well. So could you please explain about that? So any one of you,
So
maybe
yeah, well, just
power
request
or
that
oil.
we'll have to keep it short. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Basically, you want to understand what are the threats in the OT.
That's correct, yes, sir. Threats, yes, sir.
See, the industrial protocols of the layer 0 and layer 1 devices are different compared to IT protocols, layer 5 and layer above. The integration between normally in a general in industry, although we follow in OT AISS 62443 standards, the integration between the OT and the IT is through normally an OPC protocol. The latest is OPC UA, but that is also prone to hacking, because there is the protocols are different. So when the protocols are different, let's say you want the device, there is a hello, yeah, let's say I want to do a condition monitoring test. I need to monitor vibration, so I need to take it to a central layer for analytics. So the challenge is, how do I take the data from the device to the OT layer, passing all these structures? Because firewalls, we know, can be hackable. Firewalls only allow a small path only. So for a hacker, it's only a small limited area of attack. Only the area of exposure, instead of having a multi-lane, I'm focusing on a few lanes. But still attacks happen. All the cyber attacks which have happened happens in where firewalls have been installed. Another thing it is taken is the new ransomware threats is there. The encryption takes 3 seconds. If I want to encrypt, if you take any encryption protocol, the latest encryption protocols, it takes only 3 seconds to encrypt an organization data. So within 3 seconds, how do I monitor a device? So if I am giving access to OEM, let's say I'm working in my offshore, typical oil and gas sector. There's a turbine control system which goes bad, and I need access. The vendor is in USA, he doesn't get the visa, but I need my plant to run. Business requirement is the plant has to run. So how do I know his laptop is okay? How do you know what is the protocol? So these are the challenges. How do I take data out? How do I take data in? How do I consume data? and how do I update my OT systems? The problem is availability. That's why the OT systems are not patched enough. We still patch most of them with a USB drive. So these are the practical challenges, the way we work, but we need to redesign at the concept level. Unfortunately, time is short, otherwise we are in touch with, because I have been maintenance in charge of an offshore platform for quite some time. So we can have an offline discussion.
Thanks a lot, sir.
But sorry, let me be the bad guy. I'm so sorry for that. I own up the thing. We'll definitely connect offline. But genuinely, first of all, a very thanks a lot for being a lovely audience, and thank you very much, Charu ma'am, Sheetal ma'am, Anand sir, and Paparajit sir. Thanks for being in great panel session. Thank you.
I'm very thankful to all the panelist members for their